As Freedom Summer moved towards August, the state's Democratic Party met to select delegates to the National Convention. As usual, blacks were not allowed to participate, but this would be no ordinary election year. 2 weeks later, the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party chose its own delegates to challenge the right of the all-white regulars to represent the state. The MFDP emphasized that it was open to all citizens.
The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party is only beginning, and it is beginning on the basis that it believes that a political party should be open to all the people who wish to subscribe to its principles. That means it's open to even the son of the planter on whose plantation you work, if that son has reached the point that he's willing to subscribe to your principles.
The MFDP delegation of 64 blacks and 4 whites prepared to leave for Atlantic City. Their goal was to be seated at the Democratic National Convention as the true representatives of their home state. For many, it was their first trip out of Mississippi. For all, this was the culmination of Freedom Summer, the final opportunity to open up Mississippi to the nation. Atlantic City, New Jersey, site of the 1964 Democratic Convention. Lyndon Johnson expected no opposition in getting his party's nomination, but was concerned the MFDP would disrupt party unity. With the arrival of the Freedom Democrats on August 20th, there were now 2 delegations in town from Mississippi. The Democratic Party would have to decide which would represent the state on the convention floor. That decision would be made by the Credentials Committee. On Saturday, August 22nd, America watched this nationally televised hearing.
It is the very terror that these people are living through that is the reason that Negroes aren't voting, that they're kept out of the Democratic Party by the terror of the regular party. And what I want the Credentials Committee to hear is the terror which the regular party uses on the people of Mississippi, which is what Reverend King was explaining, which is what Aaron Henry was explaining, and which is what the next witness will explain, Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer.
Mr. Chairman, and to the Credentials Committee, my name is Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, and I live at 626 East Lafayette Street, Rooseville, Mississippi, Sunflower County, the home of Senator James O. Eastland and Senator Stinnett. If the Freedom Democratic Party is not seated now, I question America. Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off of the hook because our lives be threatened daily, because we want to live as decent human beings in America?
We will return to this scene in Atlantic City, but now we switch to the White House and NBC's Robert Goralski.
Lyndon Johnson cut off coverage of MFDP testimony by making a last-minute request for network airtime.
We had an hour before the Credentials Committee. Fannie Lou Hamer made her famous pitch. Martin Luther King. We had the greatest array of people you have ever can imagine, and the Credentials Committee was very impressed. But Johnson was not.
Despite the TV cut off by the president, Mrs. Hamer's message had gotten through. Viewers back home sent telegrams to delegates, urging support of the MFDP. But President Johnson was afraid Southerners would desert the party if the MFDP were seated. He began pressuring liberals close to the Freedom Democrats. Senator Hubert Humphrey, a longtime champion of civil rights, was feeling that pressure. Many believed he would not be selected for the vice presidency unless he helped stop the MFDP.
My only interest in this is an attempt to try to bring about a reconciliation of views in the hopes to keep our convention united with one objective: to defeat Mr. Goldwater in November and to carry forward the Democratic program.
Humphrey assigned Walter Mondale, his young protege from Minnesota, to work out a solution.
See, everybody was trying to think of something that was simple and would solve it and would satisfy everybody. The problem was there was no such solution. And so we'd go around and around and around, and everybody'd try this and try that, and writers would see if they could write around the problems, and philosophers see if they could dream of something to dream over the problem. It wouldn't go away. It had to be resolved. It had to be compromised, I think, in the way that we did it, and it was inevitable that some people would be unhappy.
The committee did come up with a compromise. It offered the MFDP 2 seats at large, meaning they would not represent the state of Mississippi. It allowed the all-white regulars to be seated only if they would swear loyalty to the Democratic ticket. Finally, the committee promised to bar from future conventions any delegation guilty of discrimination. In response, all but 4 of the all-white regulars walked out of the convention.
It may not satisfy everybody, the extremes on the right or the extremes on the left. But we think it is a just compromise. We think it is based soundly on the law. We think it clearly recognizes, without compromises, the basic devotion of this party to human rights. And we think it represents and sets the stage for the overwhelming victory of the man who, more than anybody else in the world, represents the cause of justice and law today, President Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Lyndon Johnson announced that Hubert Humphrey would be his running mate before boarding the plane for the convention. In Atlantic City, the Freedom Democrats had not yet decided whether to accept or reject the compromise.
We've got an offer to our people. We've got a great deal out of this. I think to call this a loss is a bad mistake.
You were talking before of no compromise. Now you've got your 2 delegates in. The regular party's gotten 3. Do you think you've made substantial gains?
I think we made a terrific gain. You always talk no compromise at a convention until you get the best you can, then you quit.
Are the leaders of the Freedom Democrats satisfied?
I don't think so, and I don't blame them. Nobody ever gets all they want. The leaders of the regulars aren't satisfied either. They're going back to Jackson.
Let my people go.
Political allies and national civil rights leaders urged the MFDP to accept the compromise, but the Freedom Democrats voted overwhelmingly to turn it down. In the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, "We didn't come all this way for no 2 seats when all of us is tired."
The whole issue around the compromise for us and for me was that it was some kind of political ploy that they understood. But for us, for Mississippi, it was what was right and what was wrong. It was, we had been done wrong. Our rights had been taken away. And you just couldn't issue some 2 seats at large to correct that. And it was a moral situation that had to be rightened. So it wasn't just a political something to get away with, is that we sit in the rooms and negotiate. You know, they knew about those kind of things, but we didn't. How to sit in the rooms and negotiate way and say, you know, we'll take the best of this, a piece of that. We went after what was right, and it was wrong the way we had been treated for hundreds and hundreds of years. Denied the right to register to vote, denied the right to participate in the political process, and that's what was going on.
The MFDP delegates made one last appeal for national attention. They tried to sit in the seats abandoned by the Mississippi regulars.
Hey, will you identify yourself for us, please?
My name is Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer. I'm the vice chairman of the Freedom Democrat Party.
Where did you get the credentials to get into the building tonight, Mrs. Hamer?
Some law friends of ours gave us an invitation to come in. We sit with them a while, and we wanted to sit in our own state.
Do you have any kind of credentials that will get you into these seats?
No, we don't. Only as American citizens.
Mr. Sergeant at Arms, have you had any contingency plans for this?
None at all. I just stand here peacefully, trying to keep this aisle clear.
Down in Mississippi, when they are before the eyes of the world, they are peaceful and loving. And when they get back to Mississippi, it's, nigger, you can't come in here. Nigger, you can't come in there. Nigger, you get out. And here we are in the eyes of the world, seeing the same thing that happens down, way down in the deep South, Mississippi.
The MFDP was never seated at the 1964 convention, but their protest opened up the Democratic Party and changed national politics. For some, Atlantic City ended in disillusionment. They had lost faith in America's leaders, but they had come to know their own power.